We're here with Tom Garner after a nice dinner and a couple glasses of bourbon. I had to headlock him into this interview because we've all been waiting for a book or an interview or something, and I feel like he's just going to work 12 hours a day until his final breath and never sit down and do this. So thank you for actually sitting down and taking some time to talk.
Pleasure's mine. The problem with that book is that you have to stop doing the thing that you love to take the time to write about it, and so you stop accumulating work towards your overall end point. And I feel like at my age, I'll do well if I've got another 10 years of being of having clarity and having the wherewithal to actually accomplish work. So to set aside my current momentum, and I feel like we have a lot of momentum in this program right now. We're actually just reaching the point of where we're ready to move to the next level. So slowing that down to document what's happened thus far is not an entirely attractive thing to contemplate. I love doing it too much to stop and write about it. But at some point I realized that if you don't document it, nobody really knows what you did. And you're ultimately at the mercy of people who themselves will interpret what you did. In most cases, they don't have a damn clue. So I thank you very much for taking the time to help me get on record with some thoughts and some documentation. And I might, who knows, I might come to really like this. Might become a total attention whore and forget about dogs altogether. I mean, it does happen to people, right?
Yeah.
There's an overweight guy in the next state up. I think it happened too.
Well, we won't. We're about to get into a whole bunch of names,
Yeah.
so we won't get into those names necessarily right now.
Okay.
But yeah, we're gonna hopefully, if this is something that works out for all of us, we'll eventually get into more helpful topics like on care for dogs and care for puppies, care for mothers, how to help dogs if there's yard accidents. There's all kinds of things that we do around here that might not be so flashy, but might be really helpful for people that are trying to move forward. But for tonight, we're going to get into some more funny topics because there was a guy we'll have to thank. His name was Alton Alfonso because he made a post recently on Facebook, and he listed all the things that people talk about on Facebook and all the stories that people make up about these dogs from people who may be in their 20s who never met any of these dogmen from 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. So I just thought it would be really funny to get your take. And maybe you don't have a take on all of them, so you can just tell us a little story about the person, or we can just go on. But that's the idea for the first show tonight. And then hopefully later on we can get some shows that can help people that are trying to do their best in the dogs.
Ultimately, I want to the benefit of the dogs, I want to be able to share things that I've learned that make our job as the stewards of the pit bull population, to make us more effective at doing those things and taking better care of the dogs. The dogs are probably the most noble entities that I've encountered in my entire life, and they deserve a lot better care, a lot more respect than they get. A lot of times they just get treated like inanimate objects, and they suffer a lot in their lives, and I have no peace with that. So at some point I would like for the objective of what we do to be to educate and elevate standards amongst dogmen to the betterment of the dogs.
Yeah, I agree. For now, we're going to get into some funny old history.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get your reactions to some general Facebook, maybe nonsense, maybe not. We're about to find out your perspective on it. So The first little bit of information was that Maurice Carver lied about every pedigree of every dog he ever sold.
Well, the idea that anybody would lie about every pedigree, man, you'd have to have your own brand of artificial intelligence to keep up with that shit. But the man was proud of himself, and rightfully so. He did a lot of good work. He was not only intelligent and wise, but he was he had a great deal of intuition about him. And basically, by intuition, I mean that he was able to look at a complex situation and readily extract the truth from it at a glance. And most really adept dog breeders have the capacity to do that. And it's something that some are largely born with and some develop, but in most cases, some people with a high capacity for intuition have the right experiences, and ultimately they develop the ability to see the truth in a situation rather quickly. So Maurice was really good at spotting the difference between a true high-quality pit bull and a mediocre dog, and his ability to function effectively as a breeder was greatly enhanced by that ability, and he took pride in it. A man that lies about every pedigree has no pride in his work. He was proud of his work, sufficiently proud of his work that he wanted to be able to point to it and say, "See, I'm a little smarter than the rest of you guys are." So I don't think it's fair to say that he lied about most of his work. I think Maurice was a little bit of a con man, but only to the extent that it was necessary for him to survive and have a comfortable life. I think he would probably spot somebody who was not going to do a damn thing worthwhile with a dog, except maybe rub on the dog on the sofa. He would never really find out the true worth of a dog, and those people, I think Maurice would do whatever it took to get their money, because there was no real consequence for long term for the breed. But I think whenever it came right down to the meat of the matter, when he was interacting on a high level with other dogmen of his day, I think he was probably pretty straight with his pedigrees. To the extent that he was proud of his work, you can look at the back covers of the old sporting dog journals, which were his, and they listed, honest to a fault, everything that his dogs did. If the dog went out and got his ass kicked and curred out, it was there in Maurice's ad. He would tell the truth. So I think where it mattered, he was an honest man, and if he just needed to help a fool part with his money, and in order for him to be able to feed the rest of his dogs, I think he didn't give a shit. So that's not me endorsing or forgiving or anything other than just recognizing patterns. I don't think he really felt like that he owed anybody the recipe. But he was proud enough to give the recipe to the people who would understand the worth of it.
Okay. All right. Floyd Boudreau. Facebook says Floyd Boudreau lied on most of his pedigrees because he didn't want to give Bobby Hall any credit.
That sounds like a Bobby Hall quote. I'm not going to get started on Bobby Hall. Bobby Hall was a formidable dogman, and I know this topic's not about Bobby, but in order to give a foreground background on that question you asked, I think you have to say a little bit about Bobby. Not everything was what it appeared to be with Bobby, and those who know will know what that means. And I'm not going to besmirch the reputation of a dead man. I think Bobby was a very hard man to beat. I know he was. I saw him in action. I know that he was way smarter than most dog men. He was using Sayu Delta Cortef 20 minutes before the contest to induce a catabolic metabolism with all the anti-shock values of that medication long before most people had a clue what that medication was. Bobby was way more intelligent than your average dog man. He was a little slippery too, but at any rate, he would love to have had credit for. He was highly invested in the Bully Son dog, Bobby Bully Son Hall, and he would have loved to have had a lot more credit for that whole Eli line than he generally got. Most people considered him to be somebody who stepped in after the fact, acquired a good dog, and did well with it. He wanted more than that. The reality is, the birthplace of the Eli blood, maybe not literally, but the source gene pools for the Eli blood was Floyd Boudreaux. Floyd is the father of that line, even if somebody else did do some of the breedings. Floyd is a fine gentleman, and I consider him to be somewhere between a brother and a father. He is a fine human being, and I can't say it any better than he said it, and that is, partner, you take the Eli blood out of the game, and you got a big old hole. That's exactly right. And he bred all the ancestors of those dogs, and he's rightfully known as the Godfather. He's a fine gentleman with fine values. He's a loyal friend, and thank God for Floyd Boudreaux.
Amen. All right. Well, next one was just one more on Bobby Hall. Says that he was the best conditioner of all time, but he bred curs.
Well, that sounds like that came from a very simple mind. And
this is one of the points of all of this. It's like all of these statements are a little bit simple-minded, and we're hoping you can expand on it.
Yeah. Well, I know where a lot of the stuff comes from. The Eli dogs, they are of a specific athletic type. They have a lot of fast twitch muscle. They're meant to work, and they work hard. They come out hard, and they work hard, and they use up resources very quickly. They reach oxygen debt, low blood sugar, a lot quicker than animals that are built with slow twitch muscles and low work rates. It's like Napoleon said, fatigue makes cowards of us all, and it does. You imagine yourself going for a nice long run, and you hadn't run in 6 months or 6 years or whatever, and you take off on this run, and it feels beautiful for about 6 steps, and then you get about half a mile in, and that fat on your belly starts bouncing, and the air runs out in your lungs, and next thing you know, it ain't the fun jaunt in the woods that you thought it was going to be. It hurts. It freaking hurts. So yeah, fatigue makes cowards of us all. Animals that burn resources, or people that burn resources at a very fast pace, reach fatigue a lot quicker. If you ever watch a power lifter, like a world-class power lifter, try to jog 50 yards, and they're pathetic. They're absolutely pathetic. The Eli dogs burn up the resources a lot quicker. If they have any cur in them, you'll see them reach fatigue quicker. But my experience is that if you are making allowances for the fact that they're doing a lot more work than any other line of dog, that they are as game as any other bloodline out there, and maybe gamer. Most of them have evolved with the proper breeding techniques to have cardiovascular systems with greater capacity. And if they are prepared properly by somebody who understands the things that I've just referenced, then they come to a hog hunt with the preparation to allow them to do a lot of work quickly and do their job and go home.
Yeah. All right. Well, next on the list is Facebook says Pat Patrick lied on all his pedigrees because Bolio was stolen. He admitted Bolio was stolen and then corrected the new pedigrees with more lies.
You know, I had probably 3 or 4 good conversations with Pat Patrick. I don't think that he routinely lied about pedigrees. If you're going to steal a dog, you probably do have to lie. About how that dog over there is bred.
Yeah.
I applaud his resolve to be the best that he could be, and if it was necessary for him to go steal Bolio to be the best he could be, then, well, you know, that was gameness on his behalf, wasn't it? Pat was intelligent enough to use his resources to good advantage. If you look at the greatest producing bloodlines in the world today, they have both of them. Most all of the top producing bloodlines have some of his work, a significant amount of his work in them, and they wouldn't be the same without his work. So, Pat Patrick, I think he was a great breeder. If he fudged a little bit on paperwork here and there, it doesn't negate the fact that he understood the American game dog, and he understood how important intelligence is in the process of having the most formidable pit bull that you can have. And I'm grateful for what he did.
What are the most significant Patrick dogs that are in your line of dogs?
Well, obviously Bolio. Bolio is the premier source of intelligence in the canine world, not just the pit bull world. I don't think there's a smarter dog out there than a good Bolio dog. So he blended several different bloodlines and really came up with a super high ability, high intelligence package. He added some boomerang blood in there, but if you go back and study what the key players said about the boomerang blood, there's good reason to believe that there's Bolio blood through one of his brothers in boomerang. So it's just more of what made Bolio that is all fused together into into my dogs through Frisco, where we added the Bolio, and also through the Mayday dogs, which had a key element through Patrick's Lady in Red, through Hollingsworth. So just Bolio himself is the key contributor to my program, and that's because of intelligence and intensity that accompany the Bolio bloodline. Let me add one other thing. I'm sorry. One of the things that people try to do whenever they're trying to capture a characteristic in bloodline is they throw as much of it as they can together. And if you're breeding Eli dogs, that's perfect. That's what you want to do, because the desirable characteristics in the Eli bloodline are controlled by recessive genes. Bolio, on the other hand,
you're giving away all the secrets.
If they can take it and run with it and pass me, I'll be applauding them as they go. On the other hand, the Bolio blood, if you inbreed it, you bring out a lot of crap. You get short couple dogs that have soft teeth, underbites. They lose the intelligence. The mothers kill and eat puppies. But if you will just make sure that it's present in the phenotype, if you have significant Bolio blood in your pedigree, and you have the Bolio characteristics in your phenotype existent in the individual, you can breed that individual and expect 2/3 to 3/4 of the offspring to possess the intelligence and intensity that were present in that phenotype. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no worries. I was just going to go back to, I felt like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask the same question about Floyd's dogs. So what were the most significant Boudreaux dogs that you put into your line?
Well, the Eli dogs, they came out in a world full of ponies and plow horses looking like the black fucking stallion. And I mean, you look at that and you think, holy shit, you know. You remember when you first saw your first Lamborghini Countach? Okay, that's what these animals look like. They were actually just animals of a higher order, and they performed on a level with their appearance. So the Eli dogs, but then it's kind of interesting that you asked that question. You asked Floyd, Mr. Floyd, what was his favorite dog of all time, and the word Eli doesn't come out of his mouth. It's Bose.
Bose, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I commissioned a painting of Floyd with his dog Bose, and gave it to him a few years back, and his eyes lit up when he received that. He was very dear to Bose. Bose was a very dominant animal in his day, and ironically, I heard him say Bose was his favorite dog, but I didn't give it the weight that it deserved. But then as time passed, and I found myself gravitating towards a couple of specific branches of the Eli family, particularly the Maverick stuff that I blended with Chinaman to produce Champion El Negro, and also the Spike Blood through Black Betty. In both those cases, as it turns out, it was the Eli blood blended with Bose, and they earned their spot in my heart and mind as the premier elite branches of the Eli blood. But ironically, they both had a strong dose of Bose way back when. And yes, Mr. Floyd, you're right. It's a better dog. It's a better dog. It's a true, honest, get her done kind of a bulldog. So it's nice to be able to have all of that fall in place with their existing bloodlines. The Spike blood still runs very strong in my program, and the El Negro blood still runs very strong. I'd be lost without those dogs.
Awesome, thank you. All right, next, and I'm going to keep saying Facebook says,
That's
because
fine.
this is just stuff we read on Facebook, and it's always interesting to me. This is not stuff we're saying necessarily, but we just think it's funny.
Yeah.
So, Facebook says, Ronald Boyles claims he bred all the dogs with his name in front, but in reality, some guy no one has ever heard of made all the breedings. Now, I'm not really that familiar with Ronald Boyles, so I don't even know what this one means, but maybe you have a better understanding of it.
I don't know anything about that particular issue. I met Ronald face to face for the very first time at an APDR show in mid-central Florida, probably 6 years ago. Found him to be a polite and knowledgeable gentleman, and wish I had the opportunity to get to know him better. With respect to his breeding, I saw a couple dogs that he bred that I liked a lot. One of them was a female named Mary Jane, who was tough on every level. The thing that struck me early on, and I'm talking back in the late 80s, early 90s, I saw that he was using the same sort of breeding formula that I was, which is Eli blood on both sides of the pedigree, with Bolio blood on one side. So that honors the conclusion that the Eli dogs have their best characteristics recessively controlled, and so it needs to be on both sides of the pedigree, and it also honors the fact that the Bolio blood will pass forward intelligence just from it being on one side of the pedigree. So he was using the 3/4, 1/4 formula the same way that I was, and I was seeing quality animals similar to my own. Naturally, if I went back to the basic animals that he used to create his dogs, I started comparing the worth of them one by one with the worth of the ones that I was using, that I had formed my basis with. And he didn't have a Chinaman at his base, but he did have a decent quality Eli foundation, and he didn't have a Hobbs Tuffy, a 3-hour, 4-hour walking dead game animal in the Bolio position. But nevertheless, the formula worked, and he produced a lot of good dogs, not on the level that we did, but very respectable, and I would like to show respect to him as well.
So, in line with that, this like heavier on the Eli side with the little bit of Bolio in there, you have Frisco, right? So what do you do once you have a Frisco? Do you just keep inbreeding that? Because like that's the formula, right? If you're 2 sides Eli, 1 side Bolio, and then you have it with Frisco, so then what do you do?
Well, if you have the formula, you're not locked into the specific animals. The truth is in the formula, not just in the animal specific animals. So one thing you have to bear in mind is Frisco, by virtue of being the correct phenotype, having the intelligence and the intensity that one needs in a Bolio dog, or needs to glean from the Bolio line, he at that point becomes the Bolio dog, since he manifests the desirable characteristics. But he was the Chinaman dog too. Really, all was necessary with him was to keep breeding him back into Chinaman or Eli dogs, and he became the key Bolio component that kept getting passed forward. So there's all, the world was mine, really. I could breed him to all kinds of half sisters. Could breed him to unrelated Maverick blood, as long as it had the Eli component. He was bringing forward the Bolio component and the Eli component, so you could breed him to a straight Maverick bitch or a straight Midnight Cowboy bitch, which is essentially the same thing. Or you could breed him to an art bred bitch, or a Pedro bred bitch, any high quality Eli source. So it was possible to go out in those different directions and honor the same formula. So the formula is the truth that gets passed forward more than the individual dogs. But naturally, when we wanted to put our best foot forward, so never had the dog produce on the level of Frisco did. 3/4 of his offspring would be would meet the criteria that most people hold forth as being the plateau that separates the greats from the goods.
Yeah, I love Frisco dogs, and it never makes sense to me when people say I like Chinaman dogs, but I don't like the Frisco stuff in there. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you don't like adding maybe the greatest bitch of all time to Chinaman?
Yeah.
Which that's the Hobbs Tuffy stuff, right?
Right.
So like, why do you not want that? Who would ever say they didn't want that in their blood?
Right.
Doesn't make sense.
Well, some people get their heads filled from creating thoughts. And some, you know where I'm going with this, right?
No, I mean, that's just a great quote. Some people get their heads filled with creating thoughts.
Yeah. And some people just have shit go in their ears and it finds a place to park itself inside their head. And so, in some circles, it's people are so tired of coming up short and coming up second that they have, they teach all the rookies a little mantra that basically says, anything but a Frisco dog. Well, it's like how it used to be with the Yankees whenever they kicked everybody's ass in baseball. Not so much anymore, but it used to be you had 80% of baseball fans were Yankee haters because everybody got tired of seeing the Yankees kick everybody's ass every year.
Yeah.
And some of that spilled over into us. We suddenly, by the grace of God and a lot of damn hard work and a lot of smart work, we found ourselves in a very enviable place. And there were a lot of envious people, and really true competitors will just they'll double up on their work and try to absolutely put their best foot forward to be competitive and do so in a way that everybody be proud of them. And then on the other hand, you got a whole class of people that go about it a totally different way. They don't have the confidence to try to confront you and try to prevail. Don't think they have a chance of prevailing. So they nip at your heels. They make up rumors. They create lies, myths, they try to undercut you rather than look you in the eye and not
Yeah.
blink.
Yeah. Yeah, it always felt like some kind of appreciation for the underdog and not it's whoever's number one. It's like people will hate on Michael Jordan
Yeah.
because it makes them feel like they know something extra. And I always like to see an underdog win, but I'd rather not be the underdog. I liked watching the Yankees dominate everybody. I like watching Khabib Nurmagomedov dominate everybody. Dominance to me is like you did all the work ahead of time
Yeah.
to dominate. So
Yeah. It just means you did your homework and you prepared.
yeah, Kentucky basketball, the mid '90s, 3 straight national championship appearances. We won't get into that here. And
Well, let's finish that conversation with saying Christian Leitner.
yeah, that's about the end of it. I actually liked him because he was the same.
Yeah.
Like as much as he may have been a prick, he dominated. So I had an appreciation for him always.
Yeah.
So
I think you probably have some Christian Leitner in you.
maybe some of the smart assness that he had, I'm full of. I think they teach that in Louisville, Kentucky.